How do you then move into talking about elders? Is it related to the death, or is this kind of something that's significantly different? Or is it related also to some of this glandular culture that you talk about?
Well, I think many of the realizations I had about elderhood came from my time in the death trade. They weren't articulated in terms of elderhood. I had to do that part. But at a real simple level, it came to this. Where I live, ever-aging population. More aged people per square foot than there's ever been. And if you just follow the math sequence, this should actually be a good news story. How so? Well, we have more age than we've ever had. We have more experience, therefore, with age than we've ever had. More on-the-ground encounters with agedness and what it means and how it could be and all of that. And more experience inherently means more capacity. And more capacity must translate as we are the most age-literate culture the world has ever seen because we're the oldest. Ask anybody who's over 65 how that's working out. Do they know themselves to be a child of an age-friendly, age-literate? You know they don't. You know they're liminal. They're on the bubble. And they know it too. And they're nobody.
Because we don't respect our elders anymore.
There's a few because, but that's one of them, certainly. So then there's something in that sequence that doesn't hold. Demographically, the observations are accurate. There's something about the conclusion that withers before you get to the finish line. I think this is what it is. Experience does not equal wisdom, nor does it prompt it, nor does it guarantee it. Experience can be traumatic, not wisdom generating, easily. So, first of all, anybody who's old, chances are very good, anybody who's my age or older has lived their entire lives minus the ongoing elder function in their lives. Or they might have had a grandparent they really loved, and hopefully they did. But grandparents are not elders. They're old, older than you, but the word elder and the word grandparent are not synonyms. And largely it's because grandparent is a consequence of what your kids did by procreating. That's how you become a grandparent. What you do with it, yeah, of course there's a repertoire and all the rest. But it's not an achievement of yours to become a grandparent. Yeah? But being an elder is nothing but that. Nobody can confer elderhood upon you arbitrarily as a consequence of a life decision that they've made. You see, they don't even touch. And the bigger observation by far is this. Grandparents, I have to generalize to speak about these things at all, and of course there's exceptions. But you could say that grandparenthood is a risk management proposition at its riskiest. What does that look like? Well, you got the grandchildren for the weekend, and you know full well the expectation of their parents is that you'll return those kids to them psychically intact and fundamentally not challenged as to their parenting practices with those children. That's the deal. Nobody gives you their kids for the weekend so you can undo some aspect of their parenting. Okay? You know what I'm going to say about elderhood. Its fundamental responsibility is cultural, not interfamilial. It's cultural. And the principal responsibility of an elder is to see to it that the culture is enhanced, endorsed, and underwritten by sanity. And wherever they see the betrayal of cultural sanity, it's their responsibility to at least blow the whistle, if not do something actively about it.
So what you're doing?
If you say so. I'd be happy if that were true. I don't know, But I know that grandparenting can't risk those kind of functions because you wouldn't be a grandparent on Monday morning. You'd be fired, you see. Yeah. So we have godparent. It's a rather chilling phrase if you let it in. I mean, that's a big deal. You know what it's used for today? It's the default booby prize. If your parents get smeared across the highway, then you become, if your parents get smeared across the highway, somebody stands in for your parents. Surrogate parents, right? The word God should mean something, shouldn't it? Signal to you that it's not a surrogate, that it's not even parenting. It's some other order of, I don't know, soul care. You know, and parenting is basically janitorial, right? It's care and feeding. I know what it's turned into. I know parents have become the de facto high priests of their children's early lives to everyone's detriment. Because nobody's capable of doing that, especially with their blood kin. You got too much wrapped up in it, you see. But if you're an elder, you have no blood kinship with the people who you're fundamentally responsible to and for. And so you bear the culture in mind and you risk it all with some frequency.
Sounds like more of an indigenous model.
Well, there's some places in the world that are mysteriously hanging on to these things and able to practice them.
Can we still do it in the West?
Not now. Not without a willingness to learn not only the poverties, as I've tried to articulate them here, but something about how it came to be this way. And that will not be pretty, and it will not be affirming, because we're the heirs to a cultural poverty we've only just begun to imagine the consequence and the extent of. And it's so overwhelming. Look, we're surrounded by technology in this room, right? That most people in the world wouldn't even know what end of the thing to point at anything. And for all of our material sophistication, our kind of poetic and spiritual chops are an extraordinary, tawdry frailty. It's because they're kind of connected. Material sophistication will generally seduce you away from the troubles because they're all solutions. Everything's a solution. To what? To what the technology made problem-wise. So more technology becomes the solution. Whose solution is that? It's technology's solution. It's the same thing with euthanasia. It's the same idea, you know. So I'm not saying, you know, live my life and, you know, try to milk a goat and good luck to you. I don't mean that, because it's more trouble for goats, you know. Totally inept people thinking they're getting back to the land. No, if you don't learn the poverties, you don't know anything. And if you don't know anything, you're not a grown-up. You're just a bag of aspiration and fret, you know, and striving to be free. But what's human freedom really? Is human freedom to be freed from anything or everything? Or is human freedom the capacity to act differently in the face of an utterly unchanged circumstance? I tend to think it's the second one. Human freedom is an exercise in being willing to proceed otherwise, when nothing in the circumstance rewards you for doing so. Elderhood, in other words. Right? That there's no payday anytime soon. Look, all this work I'm doing over all these years, taking me away from home and all the rest, I will not see any consequence to any of it. You know, it's the old adage about the vineyard. You plant the vines, you'll never drink the wine, no matter how long you live. And it's proper.
Right. It's the right thing to do, right? It's what elders do.
It's one of the things that elders do, is they proceed as if there's unborn generations.
Right.
They proceed in their presence, right? And anybody younger than you seeing you do that becomes an heir to this mystery that you've enacted. You're willing to do without? No, that's not it. You haven't done without, but you won't taste the wine. But wait, how do I know how to plant grapes? Because I have tasted wine. It's just not from my own hand. Are you saying it earlier in your life? Because someone planted.
Okay.
Yep.
But we become too disconnected from each other to see that long game as elders.
Well, if you grew up in an environment that said don't trust anybody over 30, you're asking for it. And that was the 60s. So it's no shock that people who said that as kids are now themselves 2.5 times that age. And they're the ones who are demanding euthanasia. They're the ones who are demanding to be treated for depression with LSD, they're the ones who want it. I mean, that's not a coincidence.
Is there any way back from this death phobia?
Not back. There's nothing to return to.
Right.
You know, a native friend of mine who lives at the opposite end of the lake from where I live, we were talking about this kind of stuff one day, because people come to him all the time, want him to be the noble savage, right? And he's hip to it. He's aware of it, you know?
Right.
But he'll just say to me, look, if you want to do it, you go right ahead. But you're never getting me in a teepee again. That's just what he says. I ain't living in no teepee. And then he said one day, he phoned me up and he said, I just got my test result and I got diabetes. I guess I'm a real Indian now. That's what he said. It's pure grief, no? Without the rancor. I guess I'm a real Indian now. So I don't fetishize anybody else's gig, spiritually or culturally or ceremonially. I genuinely don't. I have a high regard for them in principle if they're just trying, you know. But I don't imagine that it's there on the shelf waiting for any dominant culture white folks to dabble in as they see fit, as it benefits them. And I'll tell you why. Because I've never heard anybody who does that dabbling wanting to participate deeply in where that ceremony came from and how to maintain and sustain it. If they'd ever be allowed in, which they generally wouldn't be anyway. But why are we always positioning ourselves as beneficiaries and not benefactors? Because we've been on the take our whole lives, because that's our life way, is to be on the take, yeah? So if you don't want to start there, you'll be a solution junkie again. So that's why you hear me not issuing the 5 decrees, the 6 stages, the 7 sages, the 12 steps. I'm not saying nobody else should do it. I'm just saying the market's cornered on solutions. I live with the questions. So my glandular event is wonder. It's not certainty and salvation. It's wonder.